Hello and welcome to Live with Jesse and Melva. Yes, we are live. Actually, both of us, you see one of us right now, that you'll see both of us in just a few seconds. But let's go ahead and get started because you're here, I'm here, and Jesse's going to join us in just a second. So thank you for joining us. Again, we're both very excited about what we're going to be sharing with you. We're going to do another series. This time, we're going to do a series on secrets to lasting love. So that's for marriage and love relationships. And the secrets, we want to make sure that we take you through them one by one, because each one has value and each one has pieces that we want to make sure that we give you like the big picture experience. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with telling you a story about a couple named James and Marion. For a minute, I forgot the name. James and Marion. And what I want to start off telling you is the best part of their story. And that is that they've been married for 32 years. They've been married for a long time. They have 2 grown children. The oldest is married and has a couple of children, so they're grandparents. Their youngest is their son, and he's a senior in college. So they are empty nesters, and they were looking forward to having years of bliss. And so now here's the thing: that they're very successful in their employment. They enjoy their jobs. They're seen as leaders in their community, and for the most part, they have a good life. They love their family. They have a deep connection with their family, and in many ways, they have a deep connection with each other, except in one area. They have this one challenge. It's like the major challenge that they have, and sometimes it puts the good stuff on the back burner because they just can't get through it. Sometimes when they're going out to have date night and enjoying each other, the date starts off pretty much fun for the 2 of them. What they have found over the past year or so, that their date night turns into argue night. And they're when asked like the day after what were they arguing about, they couldn't tell you. They could just tell you that they had an argument, or they'll say things like he would say something like, she gets upset with me about the smallest thing. I mean, she's just nagging me all the time. The theme of her complaint is, he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't hear me. So it doesn't matter what the subject is, that's what they both feel. She says that he's stubborn. He says that she nags and she's upset all the time. And he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it one bit. So this has been going on. It went on a little bit when their grown children were growing up, but it's not as much because they were so distracted with the family activities and then just taking care of going to work, maintaining the household, and parenting. But now they have all of this time alone with each other. And the sad part about it is that with this time that they have together, she's feeling lonely many times because when they have an argument, it doesn't stop in a few minutes. It's like the lingering effects last for a day, 2 days, maybe 3 days. I mean, sometimes they're not even talking. And he's really upset about it in a different way. This is his second marriage. And one thing that he doesn't want again is another divorce. She says she just wants to be heard. She loves that close connection because when things are good, it's like they're really, really good. And before I make the best point about that, the next point about that, I want to share with you something that I learned in our marriage, that sometimes when there's an opportunity to have more of what is good, if you're not accustomed to it, then you don't have space for it. What we discovered was that, maybe we had a quotient, internal unconscious quotient, for how much good feelings that we could have in this relationship. And once we met that quotient, then we didn't know what to do, right? So if we had an argument and we couldn't remember what the argument was about, we finally figured out was we had to increase our capacity for having more of a good thing. It wasn't in our history. It wasn't in our DNA. It wasn't in our memory bank of what we had experienced in relationships. So in the beginning, James and Marion didn't know this. All they knew was they thought they were going to have day-to-day bliss, and it didn't happen. So what happened? They said, I'm tired of this. They were both tired of that. And they said, we have to do something different. They both decided that they wanted to do something different. And that's the first secret. To decide that for them and their situation, it's like, it's so important to decide that you want something better. Even if you don't know how to get there, even if you don't know the process, the strategy, even if you don't have the tools, the decision is first. What they considered in making that decision is that they could keep on doing what they were doing and feel distant and disconnected, or they could do something different so that they had a better outcome. And the better outcome was for them to feel closer and more connected. Now, what they didn't know, and they'll find out later when we do one of the other secrets, is that in the process of doing something different that's going to support them to feel closer and more connected, that they would be in the process also of tapping into a better version of themselves. Because what they will discover later on, and we'll share that with you, is they will both tap into bringing their A game to the relationship. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I do that a lot, but so they made the decision. And so here's why making a decision is important. Many times when people are functioning out of survival mode and they're being reactive, they are not aware of how they are impacting the other person. They know about how they're being impacted, and they become self-absorbed in their experience. They have no idea that their reaction to their frustration or the frustrating behavior of the other person is wounding to that person. They don't know that in that scenario, that both parties are feeling hurt. Both parties are feeling wounded. And so having that information, because when you don't know that you don't know what you don't know to do something different. So making the decision supports both of them deciding that they didn't want to be the recipient of wounding behavior, and they also didn't want to be the perpetrator of wounding behavior. That's a big decision, but it takes awareness to know that that's what's going on. And so that is what they did. So how did they move forward in making the decision? what they did was they took inventory of themselves individually, and they took inventory of their relationship. They made like a pros and con list. So they started with themselves individually. What were they bringing to the relationship that nourished and supported the relationship? Because when I think about relationship and relationship stages, I think about the whole growth process of how a couple who is struggling with any kind of challenge in the relationship, that the process is very predictable if they decide that they want to take the journey forward. So the journey starts with being aware of what both parties' positions are in the situation. And what it looks like to me, it starts off with you versus me. And that's where the conflict is, because you go back and forth, deciding that I'm right and you're wrong. In Imago, there is, I think Hartful Hendricks said this, we learned that, that in a love and marriage situation, sometimes the belief is you and I are one, and I'm the one. So when people are in conflict, out of their awareness, most of the time, they are not aware that everything in the situation is really about them. That they're the ones that need to be taken into consideration, not being aware that they're not taking the other person into consideration. So stage one, that's where we meet couples when they make the call to come in for counseling. Well, not come in, we're doing online now. Or attending our workshops. So that's where couples start. And they need to know that that's where they are. It's not a judgment. It's not right or wrong. It's just where they are. So the work becomes to navigate to the next step. And the next step is you and me. So you shift from you versus me to you and me working together in partnership. And one thing that we've talked about before is that whole idea of mastermind. Mm-hmm. And the mastermind is related to the third step, because that's the destination to get to the we. Most people don't know how to be a we. They know how to, some people don't know how to be a me. Or they know how to be a me poorly, because it's not their best self. And so stage two is keeping the eye on the destination and the goal and the prize, becoming more of a we. And James and Marian didn't know that when they were in conflict, when date night turned into argue night, that the stage that they were in had nothing to do about what they were arguing about. It was more about the connection, and they had lost the connection, and they didn't know how to get it back.
Right.
So it's you versus me, and then it's you and me, and then it's we. We had to learn that too.
We sure did. We sure did. And I'm glad we did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, because it turned our relationship completely around.
Yeah. And we thought that with all of the training that we had, and that all the classes that we had, you know, we thought we had this handled. We discovered once we became together as a couple, and especially the early years of our marriage, we discovered that we had a lot more to learn, that there are layers beneath the surface that we needed to peel away to find out what was going on. And so in James and Marian making the decision that they wanted something different, that they wanted to have a better experience, that they wanted to have 5 times more fun then they had arguments, then that was a real important step for them. And so that pros and con list, when they took their own inventory, they discovered a lot about themselves in terms of, a lot of times people talk about they find out about their faults. Well, we don't look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
What we look at is the parts of self that are underdeveloped or undeveloped. Because if people know how to show up fully, they would do it. But if they have not had the experience or the support to do that, then they show up the only way that they know how. I mean, sometimes when working with couples and listening to couples, and sometimes we'll hear something like, when I was growing up, I pretty much raised myself. And there were two parents in the household. But for some reason, that person that we're talking about, who's trying to be successful in their marriage and bringing the tools that they have that are limited, they didn't know that there are certain things that are essential to being a good partner, to being a good team player. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, and that doesn't mean that the person didn't see any good things in terms of how to show up. It means that there's some things that they were not exposed to,
Right.
that they weren't able to tap into, so they couldn't bring it into the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So James and Marion found out what needed to grow within them. Then they looked at the relationship, and they looked at what was missing in the relationship. And when they got in touch with that, then they took the next step. We're going to talk about that next time, what that next step is. So the stages are you versus me, to you and me, to we. So they looked at their pros and con list and looked at how they were doing in terms of how many qualities that they expressed in themselves that contributed to a strong relationship. And they looked at the con list, those were the areas that both of them needed to grow individually.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that one of the important things that I learned in our relationship was that I was deficient in some ways. There were things that I made the assumption. I think you said it another time. The way you expressed it was, you expecting, or I'm expecting you to know what I need and to give it to me without me asking for it.
I did.
And so when I learned that what was deficient in me was the idea that I could ask for what I want, and there was a good chance that I might get it. But unless I ask, there's no possibility of either you knowing or me getting what I wanted. So that's just one example.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a deficient area in me and something I had to learn how to do and then practice that.
Let's call it a growth area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A growth area. Yeah. And we both have them. And couples have them. It's not always the same thing that needs to grow, but whatever it is, it's real important to know what that is. And so that's what James and Marion discovered on their pros and con list, because the con list really let them know ways that they were sabotaging themselves and each other and the results that they wanted to have
Right.
in their relationship with each other. That piece is so important because that's the starting point. Because you really, if you don't know where you're going, you'll go anywhere. And you have to decide. All of us have to decide what direction that we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we'll stay in the spiral over and over again, on a treadmill, going nowhere, having the same argument over and over again.
Making the same mistakes over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And they have 32 years of marriage, and they continue to look forward to their golden years, and they can have them. And because they decided that they want to move forward, then that opens the door to many, many possibilities. So our question is, what about you? We shared with you about James and Marion, and we gave you a little information about us. You know, sometimes when we do our workshops and what have you, and now that we're doing these online sessions, called a session, that when we're sharing about ourselves, you probably learn more about us than you would ever want to know. And the reason why we share examples about us, so that you know that we are real people, and that the things that we're talking about, the information that we're sharing, that we have experienced it too. And we too gave ourselves the gift of discovering what was the best way to move forward. We came in with a lot of information, a lot of insight, a lot of strengths, and we also had areas to grow. And that's what we think about when we work with couples. And that's what we want you to consider. We're not talking about everything that's wrong in a relationship. We're talking about where you get stuck, that there's a way to get unstuck, and in the process, growth happens. Harville Hendricks says, conflict is growth trying to happen. We both agree with that.
Agree with that.
Yeah. All right, so the decisions first. So are you struggling with either arguing over the same thing over and over again, or just stuck with at least one thing that you can't seem to get past? What will you decide about what you want different? Nobody wants to stay in conflict. No one wants to feel angry and frustrated constantly, consistently. No one wants that. So the first step is a decision. Are you willing to make a decision that you want something different? And if you're working together on this, do both of you want that? And if you're willing to make the decision to move forward, then you'll be ready for the next secret that we're going to share next time. And so between now and then, if you would like support as you think through your decision, we invite you to sign up for a telephone consultation with the two of us. It's a free consultation. All you have to do is to go to jesseandmelva.com/consultation. Yeah, consultation. And just fill out the form. We'll get the information. We will contact you, and we'll set up a time that works for all four of us, because it'll be both of us and both of you. And we'll talk about taking that first step, that jump start to moving forward. Thank you for joining us this time.
Hey.
And we are looking forward to secret number 2, and that will be next week. Until then, it's Jesse and Melva saying, take care.
Watch watch Live with Jesse and Melva right here on Solivity TV every Sunday at 5 Eastern. Solivity Magazine brings you the best in inspiration on Solivity TV. Check out our new shows. Mark your calendars for Solivity Magazine shows by going to solivity.com now.